The whip cracked across her back for the third time that morning, and Calith Vorn didn't scream. She never screamed anymore. Blood soaked through the thin fabric of her servant's tunic as Luna Thessa's voice dripped poison. You exist because I allow it, broken thing. Around them, the Pax mountain fortress hummed with oblivious life. Warriors training, children laughing, none of them knowing what happened in the Luna's private chambers. Calith's wolf stirred somewhere deep and unreachable, a caged thing that had been silent for so long she sometimes forgot it existed at all. If this story grips you, stay until the end to see how the weakest becomes the strongest. Hit that like button and comment which city you're watching from. Let's build this community together. Shatters. The mountain stronghold of the Ironclaw Pack sat like a scar across the northern peaks, all granite and ice and old violence. Calith had lived here for 6 years, and every single day had taught her the same lesson. Survive, no matter what it costs. She moved through the servant corridors now with practiced silence, her movements economical despite the fresh wounds beneath her clothes. The morning light filtered through arrow slits in the stone, casting long shadows that she kept to instinctively. Other servants passed without meeting her eyes. They'd learned that lesson too. Association with Calith Vorn meant trouble. Broken Kael, some called her. The mute, said others. She'd stopped correcting them years ago. Her wolf had gone silent when she was 16 during her first transformation trial. Something had fractured inside her that night, some connection between human and beast that should have been unbreakable. The pack healers had examined her, muttering about psychological blocks and spiritual damage. Alpha Ronan Draven himself had stood there, young and newly crowned, disappointment clear in his eyes. She's useless, Luna Thessa had declared, her beautiful face arranged in false sympathy. But perhaps we can find her work in the kitchens. That had been Thessa's first kindness, also her last. Calith reached the linen storage, grateful for the solitude. Her hands moved automatically, sorting the fresh sheets that would go to the upper quarters where the ranked wolves lived. Her back throbbed with each movement, but she'd developed a kind of relationship with pain over the years. It was constant, reliable. It meant she was still alive. There you are. The voice made every muscle in Calith's body lock up. She turned slowly, keeping her eyes down, and found Mira, one of Luna Thessa's personal attendants, standing in the doorway. Mira was everything Calith wasn't, confident, whole, connected to her wolf. Her eyes held that peculiar mixture of pity and disgust that Calith had come to recognize as the pack's default expression toward her. Luna Thessa wants you. Immediately. Calith's throat closed. She'd already attended the Luna twice this morning, once for the regular beating, and once to deliver breakfast. A third summons meant something had gone wrong, or that Thessa was in one of her moods. Well? Mira's voice sharpened. Move. The walk to the Luna's chambers felt like a death march. Calith kept her breathing even, reciting the words her mother had made her promise before dying. Survive. Whatever it takes. Survive. The Luna's rooms occupied the highest floor of the fortress, with windows that overlooked the entire valley. Calith had cleaned these rooms 1,000 times, had bled on these floors more often than she could count. The scent hit her first, Thessa's signature perfume, something floral that always made Calith's stomach turn because it meant pain was coming. Thessa stood by the window, her golden hair catching the light like a halo. She was beautiful the way a blade was beautiful, sharp, cold, purposeful. When she turned, her smile was gentle. That was always the worst sign. Calith, come here, dear. Calith approached, counting her steps. 15 to reach the Luna. 15 chances to prepare for whatever was coming. I've been thinking about you, Thessa said, her voice warm. To anyone listening, she would have sounded concerned, motherly even. About your condition, your brokenness. Calith kept her eyes on the floor. Speaking without permission earned punishment. Remaining silent usually did too, but at least it was predictable. Look at me when I'm speaking to you. Calith raised her eyes. Thessa's face remained kind, but her amber wolf eyes glittered with something hungry. Do you know what you cost this pack? Thessa continued. Resources, food, space, all wasted on something that can't even shift, can't fight, can't serve any real purpose. She moved closer, and Calith could smell the wolf just beneath Thessa's skin. Sometimes I wonder why we keep you at all. You're merciful, Luna. Calith's voice came out steady, practiced. The right answer. Merciful. Thessa tasted the word. Yes, I suppose I am. Though mercy has its limits. Her hand moved so fast Calith didn't have time to flinch. The slap cracked across her face, splitting her lip. Limits you keep testing. Calith tasted blood. She didn't move. The Alpha's mother is coming to visit, Thessa said, as if the violence hadn't happened. Elder Moira. You remember her? Calith did. Elder Moira had been kind once, before Calith's wolf had broken. Now she just looked uncomfortable whenever their paths crossed. She'll be staying in the eastern guest quarters. I want everything perfect. If there's so much as a speck of dust, if her water isn't the exact temperature she prefers, if anything is less than flawless. Thessa's fingers caught Calith's chin, forcing her head up. I'll make our morning sessions look gentle. Understand? Yes, Luna. Good. Thessa released her, turning back to the window. You're dismissed. Calith made it 3 steps before Thessa spoke again. Oh, and Calith? Wear something with longer sleeves tomorrow. You're starting to look unsightly. The scars. Thessa meant the scars that covered Calith's arms, her back, places no one else could see. Evidence that the Luna kept hidden with careful precision. Calith bowed and left. The eastern guest quarters required 2 days of preparation. Calith worked mostly alone, which was how she preferred it. Other servants gave her wide berth, either out of fear of association or simple discomfort with her presence. She scrubbed floors until her knees bled through her skirts, polished every surface until it gleamed, tested and retested the water temperature in the bathing room. Elder Moira arrived on the second evening, and Calith was there to greet her, silent, invisible, exactly as she'd been trained. Still here, girl? Moira's voice held surprise, maybe disappointment. She was a hard woman, weathered by years of pack politics, but Calith remembered when those eyes had held warmth. I'd have thought you'd have left by now. Found somewhere more accepting. There was nowhere more accepting. Wolves without wolves were outcasts everywhere. At least here, Calith knew the rules. The room is prepared, Elder, Calith said quietly. Moira studied her for a long moment, and Calith felt the weight of that examination. Whatever the Elder saw made her mouth tighten. You've gotten thinner, Calith said nothing. Moira sighed. Well, I suppose that's none of my business anymore. She moved past, and Calith caught the scent of disappointment rolling off her. Another relationship calcified into indifference. The next morning, everything went wrong. Calith woke early, as always, and went to check on the Elder's quarters. She found the door already open, which was unusual. Inside, the room was in chaos. Furniture overturned, Elder Moira's belongings scattered across the floor. And there, in the center of it all, lay Luna Thessa. She was breathing, conscious, but her sleeping gown was torn, and there were scratches on her arms. When she saw Calith, her eyes went wide with what looked like fear. Guards! Thessa's scream could have shattered glass. Guards! Help! Calith stood frozen, her mind unable to process what she was seeing. Thessa scrambled backward, her performance perfect. The terrified victim, the innocent Luna attacked in her own fortress. She tried to kill me, Thessa gasped as guards poured into the room. I came to check on Elder Moira, and she attacked me. No, Calith started, but hands were already grabbing her, forcing her to her knees. I saw it, Thessa continued, her voice breaking beautifully. The broken thing finally snapped. She's always resented me, resented us all for her weakness. I should have seen this coming. I should have protected myself. Luna Thessa, I didn't... Silence. The voice that cut through the chaos belonged to Alpha Ronin Draven. He stood in the doorway, and the crowd of guards and gathering servants parted for him immediately. He was a massive man, built like the mountain itself, with dark hair and eyes that missed nothing. What happened here? Thessa's face crumpled. Ronin, I'm so sorry. I tried to help her, I really did. But she attacked me. She would have killed me if the guards hadn't come. Ronin's gaze moved to Calith, still held on her knees by 2 guards. His expression was unreadable. Is this true? No, Alpha. Calith's voice was steady despite the terror clawing at her throat. I found the room like this. Luna Thessa was already here when I arrived. She's lying! Thessa stood now, supported by her attendants. She came at me like an animal. I barely escaped. If I'd attacked you, Luna, there would be marks on my hands, blood under my nails. Calith held up her hands, showing them to Ronan. There's nothing. She cleaned them, Thessa said immediately. Obviously. In the 30 seconds between your scream and the guards arriving? Calith met Ronan's eyes directly, breaking every rule of pack hierarchy. Desperation made her bold. Alpha, please, think about this. Why would I attack the Luna? What would I possibly gain? Revenge, Thessa supplied. For being broken. For being nothing while the rest of us are whole. Something flickered in Ronan's expression. Where's Elder Moira? Everyone turned. In the chaos, no one had checked the sleeping chamber. A guard hurried to look, returning moments later with his face pale. Elder Moira is asleep in her bed, Alpha. Deeply asleep. There's a scent in the room, something medicinal. Someone drugged her, Calith said. The pieces were falling into place, a setup so obvious it made her sick. Someone wanted her unconscious during this. Enough! Ronan's voice silenced the room. Take Calith to the holding cells. Luna Thessa, go to the healers. I want a full examination and documentation of your injuries. His eyes found Calith again. We'll convene a formal hearing at sunset. Until then, no one speaks of this. The cells beneath the fortress were carved from the same granite as everything else, cold and unyielding. Calith sat on the stone bench and tried to control her shaking. This was it. Thessa had finally decided to be done with her, and she'd chosen a method that would be permanent. An attack on the Luna carried only one punishment: execution. Hours passed. The thin window high on the wall showed the sun's progress across the sky, marking time until her death. Calith found herself thinking about her mother, about the promise she'd made. She'd survived 6 years of Thessa's torture. She'd endured when it would have been easier to give up. But survival had limits, and Thessa had finally found hers. The sound of footsteps made her look up. Beta Marcus stood outside her cell, his weathered face troubled. He'd been kind to her once, years ago, before kindness became too dangerous. Calith Vorn. His voice was formal. Alpha Ronan requests your presence in his study. You'll be escorted. The Alpha's study was a place Calith had cleaned but never truly seen. Now, standing in it with guards flanking her, she noticed details. The maps on the walls showing pack territories, the weapons mounted above the fireplace, the complete absence of anything soft or comfortable. Ronan sat behind a massive desk, his expression unreadable. Leave us, he said to the guards. They hesitated. Alpha, she's dangerous. She's 110 pounds and has no wolf. Ronan's tone didn't change. I think I can manage. Leave us. When the door closed, silence stretched between them. Calith kept her eyes down, her hands clasped in front of her. She could feel Ronan studying her. Look at me. She obeyed. His eyes were darker than she remembered, darker and colder. Tell me the truth, he said. Did you attack Luna Thessa? No, Alpha. Did you destroy Elder Moira's quarters? No, Alpha. Have you ever wished harm on Luna Thessa? The question was a trap. Calith's mouth went dry. Honesty would condemn her. Lies would condemn her. Either way, she was already condemned. Every day, she said quietly. Every single day for 6 years. Ronan's eyebrows rose. Explain. And so Calith talked. The words came out flat, factual, because emotion would break her and she needed to stay intact for this. She told him about the beatings, the systematic torture, the careful precision with which Thessa had brutalized her while maintaining a public image of mercy. She told him about the scalding water, the whip, the hours locked in cold storage rooms. She told him everything. When she finished, Ronan was silent for a long moment. Why didn't you report this? To who? The question came out sharper than she intended. You, the Pack Council? Who would believe a broken wolf over the Luna? You could have left. Where would I go? Calith felt something crack inside her, 6 years of silent endurance spilling out. I have no pack, no family, no wolf. Every pack in the region knows I'm damaged goods. I'd be rogue, alone, hunted. At least here I knew the rules. At least here I had a roof. At least here you had systematic abuse, Ronan said quietly. Yes, Caleth's voice steadied, but I survived it. I kept my promise to survive. What promise? To my mother. Before she died, she made me swear I would survive no matter what. So I did. Caleth met his eyes. But I didn't attack Luna Thessa. That's a line I never crossed, no matter how much I wanted to. Ronan stood, moving to the window. His broad back blocked the light. Show me your scars. Caleth's hands went cold. Alpha, if what you're saying is true, there will be evidence. Show me. With shaking hands, Caleth unbuttoned her high-collared shirt, letting it fall to her waist. She heard Ronan's sharp intake of breath, turned her back to him so he could see the full map of Thessa's cruelty. Whip marks layered over burn scars, old wounds healed badly, new ones still raw. Dear gods, his voice was barely audible. How long? 6 years since the week after you made her Luna. Why that specific time? Caleth pulled her shirt back on, fingers clumsy with the buttons. She said I made her look bad, that having a broken wolf in her household reflected poorly on her mercy and leadership. She said she'd teach me to be grateful for her kindness. This is not kindness. No, Caleth agreed. It's not. Ronan turned back to face her, and something in his expression had shifted. The hearing is in 2 hours. I need you to repeat everything you just told me, in front of the entire pack council. They won't believe me. Maybe not, but I'm starting to. He moved back to his desk, pulling out a piece of parchment. I'm ordering a full investigation. Every servant who's worked with you, every healer who's treated you, every interaction you've had with Luna Thessa. We're going to find the truth. And if the truth isn't enough, Caleth asked, if the pack chooses to believe her instead? Ronan's jaw tightened. Then I'll have failed as an alpha. But I won't execute an innocent woman without being absolutely certain of her guilt. The hearing chamber was packed. Every ranked wolf in the fortress had come, drawn by the scandal of a servant attacking the Luna. Caleth stood in the center, exposed and alone, while Thessa sat elevated with the healer's reports in her favor. Alpha Ronan presided, his face carved from stone. We're here to determine the truth of what happened in Elder Moira's quarters this morning, he began. Luna Thessa claims she was attacked by the servant Caleth Vorn. Caleth denies this. Both will have a chance to present their case. Thessa went first, her testimony perfect. She described coming to check on Elder Moira, finding the room in disarray, and then being attacked by a wild-eyed Caleth who had finally snapped under the weight of her own inadequacy. Her tears were precisely timed, her voice breaking at exactly the right moments. Then it was Caleth's turn. She told the truth, all of it. The years of abuse, the systematic torture, the careful way Thessa had hidden evidence. She showed her scars to the assembly, heard the gasps and murmurs. Some looked away. Others stared with morbid fascination. You're lying, Thessa said when Caleth finished. These scars could be from anything, self-harm, accidents in the kitchens. Bring in the servants, Ronan interrupted, all of them who worked near Caleth. What followed was a parade of testimony that painted a damning picture. Servants who'd seen Caleth limping, bleeding, frightened, others who'd witnessed Thessa summoning her with cruel smiles. A healer who'd treated burns that matched the pattern of deliberate torture. Piece by piece, the truth assembled itself. But the most damaging evidence came from Elder Moira herself, finally awakened from her drugged sleep. I found this in my tea, she said, holding up a small vial. Sleeping draught. Someone wanted me unconscious. Her eyes found Thessa. And I remember now, before I fell asleep, I saw someone in my room, someone with blonde hair wearing a Luna's crest. The chamber erupted. Thessa stood, her face finally showing cracks in the perfect mask. This is absurd. You're all turning on me for a broken thing who can't even shift. Enough. Ronan's voice cut through the chaos like a blade. Luna Thessa, you are hereby stripped of your title pending full investigation. Beta Marcus, escort her to quarters under guard. You can't do this! Thessa's composure shattered completely. I am Luna. I am... You are a liar and an abuser, Ronan said flatly. And if these accusations prove true, you'll be exiled from this pack permanently. Take her away. As guards moved in, Thessa's eyes found Calith. The hatred there was pure and undiluted. This isn't over, she hissed. You think you've won, broken thing? You've won nothing. You're still empty, still useless. Still alive, Calith interrupted quietly. Which is more than you'll be able to say about your position here. The hearing ended in chaos, but as Calith was led back to her cell, now for protective custody rather than punishment, she felt something unfamiliar stir in her chest. Hope. Maybe, after 6 years of surviving, she was finally going to get to live. The cell wasn't cold anymore. Someone had brought blankets, real ones, thick wool that didn't smell of mildew. There was food too. Not the kitchen scraps Calith had survived on for years, but actual portions from the main hall. She sat on the stone bench and stared at the bread and cheese like they might disappear if she blinked. You planning to eat that, or just look at it? Beta Marcus stood outside the bars, his arms crossed. His expression was complicated, guilt mixed with something that might have been respect. I don't understand, Calith said quietly. What's to understand? You're under protection now. Alpha's orders. Marcus shifted his weight. For what it's worth, I'm sorry. We should have seen what was happening. You did see. You all saw. Calith picked up the bread, tore off a piece. It was fresh, still warm. You just didn't want to believe it. Marcus flinched. Yeah, that's about right. He pulled a key from his belt. Alpha wants to see you. You'll be moved to guest quarters under guard. Better than down here. The walk through the fortress felt different now. Servants still avoided her eyes, but the quality of their avoidance had changed. Before it had been fear of contamination. Now it was shame. Calith kept her head down anyway, old habits dying hard. The guest quarters were on the 3rd floor, modest but clean. 2 guards stationed themselves outside the door as Marcus showed her in. Someone will bring your things, he said. What little there is. I don't have things, Calith replied. She owned nothing except the clothes on her back and a small wooden box containing her mother's ring. Everything else had been borrowed, temporary, never truly hers. Marcus nodded, uncomfortable. Right. Well, get some rest. The investigation continues tomorrow. Alone, Calith moved to the window. It faced east, overlooking the training grounds where young wolves practiced shifting and combat. She watched them move with the fluid grace of people who'd never questioned their right to exist, who'd never felt their wolf go silent, and wondered if they'd ever be whole. Something bitter twisted in her chest. She'd survived Thessa's torture, survived the false accusation, but she was still broken, still incomplete. The hearing had changed her circumstances, but not her fundamental nature. A knock interrupted her thoughts. She turned to find Elder Moira at the door, the guards having let her pass. May I come in? Calith gestured toward the room's single chair. Moira sat heavily, her age showing in the way her joints protested the movement. I owe you an apology, Moira said without preamble. I knew something was wrong. I saw you getting thinner, saw the fear in your eyes when Thessa was near. I told myself it wasn't my business. It wasn't, Calith said. I'm not your responsibility. You were a child when you came here, 16 and terrified. I should have... Moira stopped, shook her head. But I didn't, and for that, I'm sorry. Calith sat on the bed, her hands folded in her lap. What happens now? That depends on the investigation. If they find enough evidence, Thessa will be exiled. The pack will need a new Luna. Moira's eyes were sharp. But there's resistance. Thessa has allies, wolves who benefited from her favor. They're already spreading counter-narratives. That I'm lying. That you're manipulative. That you orchestrated this whole thing to get revenge. That your scars are self-inflicted for sympathy. Moira's mouth thinned. People believe what they want to believe, especially when the truth is uncomfortable. So nothing changes. Everything's already changed, child. The question is whether it changes for the better or worse. Moira stood. Ronan's a good alpha, but he's young. He's trying to do right by you, but the pack doesn't make it easy. Watch yourself. After Moira left, Calith lay on the bed and stared at the ceiling. Sleep wouldn't come. Every sound in the corridor made her tense, waiting for Thessa's people to come finish what their Luna had started. Dawn brought Beta Marcus again, this time with news. Pack Council meeting in an hour. You're required to attend. The council chamber was different in daylight, less ominous, more bureaucratic. The ranked wolves filed in with expressions ranging from curious to hostile. Calith took her designated spot near the back, acutely aware of how every eye tracked her movement. Ronan entered last, his presence filling the room immediately. He didn't sit. The investigation into Luna Thessa's conduct has revealed substantial evidence of long-term abuse, he began. Multiple witnesses, physical evidence, healer testimonies. The charges against Calith Vorn are dismissed. Luna Thessa will face exile. Murmurs rippled through the assembly. A wolf named Garrett, one of Thessa's strongest supporters, stood. With respect, Alpha, this seems rushed. We're condemning our Luna based on the word of a broken wolf and some old scars. Maybe Thessa was harsh, but harsh isn't illegal. Leadership requires discipline. Discipline? Ronan's voice could have cut stone. Is that what we're calling torture now? We only have her word for how those scars happened, another wolf spoke up. Celine, who'd been Thessa's closest friend. Calith admits she hated the Luna. Who's to say she didn't hurt herself to frame her? Calith felt the room's attention shift, could taste the doubt in the air. Her hands clenched in her lap. The healer reports show patterns consistent with sustained abuse over years, Ronan said. Not self-harm. Healers can be wrong, Garrett countered. And frankly, Alpha, this reeks of you being manipulated. Calith plays the victim, you ride in as the hero, and conveniently Thessa, who might have questioned your judgment, gets removed. It's politically convenient. The accusation hung in the air. Ronan's jaw tightened, but before he could respond, Calith stood. May I speak? Silence fell. Ronan nodded slowly. You're right, Calith said, her voice steady despite the tremor in her hands. You only have my word. You have scars that could have multiple explanations. You have witnesses who might be lying to curry favor with the Alpha. She met Garrett's eyes directly. But ask yourself this, what do I gain? I'm still broken, still wolfless. Even if Thessa is exiled, I'm still at the bottom, still nothing. Revenge, Celine said coldly. You gain revenge. Revenge doesn't feed me, doesn't house me, doesn't give me back 6 years of my life. Calith's voice hardened. If I wanted revenge, I'd have done what Thessa accused me of. I'd have actually hurt her. But I didn't. Because despite everything she did to me, I kept my word. I survived within the rules. Convenient philosophy, Garrett sneered. Believe what you want. Calith turned to Ronan. I've told the truth. If the pack chooses not to believe it, that's their right. But I won't recant to make anyone comfortable. She sat down, her heart hammering. The council erupted in argument, some defending her, most skeptical, all loud. Ronan let it continue for several minutes before calling for order. The evidence stands, he said firmly. Luna Thessa's exile is effective immediately. This matter is closed. Then we need a new Luna, Elder Cormac spoke from the back. The pack can't function without one. I'll choose when I'm ready, Ronan replied. Until then, the pack survives. The meeting dissolved into smaller arguments, factions forming and reforming. Calith slipped out quietly, but she'd barely reached the corridor when a hand grabbed her arm. Celine stood there, her eyes blazing. You think you've won something? You've destroyed a good woman's life with lies. Let go of me. Thessa cared about this pack. She was strong, capable, everything a Luna should be, and you tore her down because you couldn't handle your own weakness. Calith yanked her arm free. If she was so strong, why did she need to torture someone helpless to feel powerful? You little... Celine. Beta Marcus appeared, his voice carrying warning. Step back. Celine's lip curled, but she obeyed. This isn't over. Thessa has friends, allies. You're not safe here, broken thing. I've never been safe here, Calith said quietly. But I'm still standing. The next 3 days brought a cascade of small cruelties. Food deliveries forgotten. Guards looking the other way when someone bumped her hard in corridors. Whispers that followed her like smoke. Liar, manipulator, home wrecker. The pack was splitting, and Calith found herself at the center of a divide she'd never asked for. On the fourth day, Ronan summoned her to his study again. "It's getting worse," he said without preamble. "Thessa's faction is growing. They're calling this a coup, saying I'm using you to consolidate power." "Are you?" Calith asked. Ronan's eyebrows rose. "Excuse me? Using me? It's a fair question." She sat without being invited, exhaustion making her bold. "I'm politically convenient. The broken wolf you saved makes you look merciful and just. Is that what you think this is? I think you're a good alpha trying to do the right thing. I also think I'm the excuse your opposition needed to challenge you." Calith met his eyes. "And I think we're both about to pay for your mercy." Ronan was quiet for a long moment. "Thessa's exile hearing is tomorrow. She's demanded the right to defend herself publicly. She'll make it a spectacle." "Yes." Ronan moved to the window, his silhouette dark against the light. "She'll paint herself as the victim of a broken wolf's manipulation and an alpha's weakness. She'll rally her supporters, and if she's convincing enough, the council might overturn my decision." "Can they do that?" "If enough ranked wolves demand it, yes. Pack law requires consensus for exile." He turned. "I need you to testify again, in detail, everything she did." Calith's stomach turned. "They didn't believe me the first time." "Some did. We need to convince more." Ronan's expression was intense. "I know what I'm asking. I know it means reliving trauma publicly, but it's the only way to make sure she faces consequences. And if it doesn't work, if they side with her, then she stays. And I've made an enemy of my own Luna. The pack fractures. We're vulnerable to outside threats." Ronan's jaw tightened. "And you become a target for every wolf who sees you as the one who caused this mess." "I'm already a target. It'll get worse, much worse." He paused. "I can't protect you from the entire pack, Calith. If this goes badly, you'll need to leave. Disappear before her supporters make you disappear permanently." Calith stood, her legs shaky. "You're asking me to risk everything, again, for a system that's already shown it doesn't want me. I'm asking you to help me fix a broken system, to make sure what happened to you can't happen to anyone else. I'm one person, one broken, wolfless person. What makes you think my testimony will matter?" "Because truth matters," Ronan said quietly. "Even when it's inconvenient, even when it's dangerous, even when people don't want to hear it." He moved closer. "You survived 6 years of hell and kept your humanity. That's not weakness. That's strength the pack needs to see." Calith wanted to laugh, to cry, to scream. Instead, she just nodded. "Fine, I'll testify. But Alpha, when this goes sideways, because it will, don't blame yourself. You tried." The exile hearing was scheduled for noon in the main hall, large enough to accommodate the entire pack. Calith spent the morning in her quarters, trying to prepare for public humiliation. She'd chosen her plainest dress, high-collared to hide some scars, but long sleeves that could be rolled back to show others. Evidence that couldn't be denied. Beta Marcus came to escort her at 11:30. "Big crowd," he warned. "Thessa's people have been working them up. Expect hostility." The main hall was packed. Hundreds of wolves filled every available space, their scents mingling into an overwhelming wall of aggression, curiosity, and judgment. Calith walked down the center aisle feeling like prey in a predator's den. Some faces showed sympathy. Most showed suspicion. Thessa sat at the front, flanked by her supporters. She'd dressed carefully, simple clothes, no jewelry, her hair loose, the picture of humility and innocence. When their eyes met, Thessa smiled slightly, a private acknowledgement of the battle about to begin. Ronan called the assembly to order from his raised platform. "We're here to determine whether Luna Thessa's actions warrant permanent exile from the Ironclaw pack. Both sides will present evidence. The council will vote." His eyes swept the crowd. "This is not entertainment. This is justice. Act accordingly." Thessa stood first. Her testimony was masterful. She acknowledged being strict with Calith, admitted to disciplining her when necessary, but painted it as proper correction of a troubled servant who'd been given chances despite her broken nature. "I tried to help her," Thessa said, her voice breaking beautifully. "I gave her purpose when she had none. work when others would have cast her out. And this is how she repays that mercy, with lies and manipulation turning the pack against itself. "You beat her," someone called out. "Multiple witnesses confirmed it." "I disciplined her when she failed her duties," Thessa corrected, "as is my right as Luna. A slap for spilled food, a switch for damaged property. Nothing beyond what any household manages." She looked directly at Calith. "If she chose to hurt herself afterward to make me look cruel, that's not my fault." Murmurs of agreement rippled through Thessa's supporters. Calith felt the momentum shifting, could see doubt creeping into neutral faces. Then it was her turn. She stood, her legs somehow steady, and rolled back her sleeves. Let them see the scars crisscrossing her forearms like hateful calligraphy. "These aren't from discipline," she said clearly. "These are from methodical torture, hours in cold storage, scalding water, a whip kept specifically for me." She turned her back, unbuttoned her collar enough to show the worst of the marks, heard the gasps. "This is what Luna Thessa calls correction." "You could have done that yourself," Celine called out. "Desperate people do desperate things." "Why would I?" Calith turned back. "What possible reason would I have to hurt myself this extensively, this consistently, for 6 years?" "Mental instability," Garrett suggested. "Your broken wolf clearly damaged more than just your transformation." "Or," Calith said, her voice hardening, "you're all choosing a comfortable lie over an uncomfortable truth. Because if you admit what Thessa did to me, you have to admit you all stood by and let it happen." The hall exploded, wolves shouting at each other, at her, at Ronan. The Alpha called for order repeatedly, his voice barely cutting through the chaos. Finally he stood, and the sheer force of his presence demanded silence. "Enough! We vote now!" "Wait!" A new voice cut through, Elder Moira, standing in the back. "Before we vote, I have something to present." She moved to the front, pulling a small leather journal from her robes. "I found this among Thessa's belongings during the investigation, her personal diary." Thessa's face went white. "That's private property." "It's evidence," Moira corrected. She opened to a marked page. "Shall I read some entries? Let's see." "The broken thing flinched beautifully today. I'm perfecting the technique of hitting hard enough to hurt without leaving visible marks." Or this one, "Calith's spirit is almost broken. A few more months and she'll be a perfect silent toy." The hall went dead silent. Moira continued reading, each entry more damning than the last. Detailed accounts of torture, of pleasure taken in causing pain, of calculated cruelty designed to destroy Calith while maintaining Thessa's public image. When Moira finished, even Thessa's strongest supporters looked shaken. "These could be forged," Garrett tried, but his voice lacked conviction. "This is my handwriting," Thessa said quietly. Then, louder. "This is my journal, yes, but it's taken out of context." "What context makes torture acceptable?" Ronan demanded. Thessa's mask finally shattered completely. She deserved it. Walking around broken, a constant reminder of failure. She's an insult to everything we are, everything we should be. Someone needed to teach her that weakness has consequences. The admission hung in the air. No more pretense, no more performance, just raw hatred. "The vote," Ronan said into the silence. "All in favor of permanent exile?" Hands rose throughout the hall. Not all. Thessa's core supporters held firm, but more than enough. The majority had spoken. "Luna Thessa, Voa Thessa." Ronan's voice was formal, final. "You are hereby exiled from the Iron Claw Pack. You have until sunset to leave our territory. If you return, you'll be killed as a rogue." Thessa stood, her dignity rebuilt through sheer will. "This pack will regret this. All of you." Her eyes found Calith one last time. "Especially you, broken thing. You think you've won, but you're still nothing, still empty. And one day you'll realize that destroying me didn't fix you." Guards escorted her out. The hall remained silent until her footsteps faded, then erupted into a chaos of reaction, relief, anger, disbelief, vindication. Calith stood in the center of it all, feeling strangely hollow. She'd won. Thessa was gone. So why did it feel like she'd just painted a target on her own back? The answer came 2 hours later when she returned to her quarters and found them destroyed. Furniture overturned, belongings shredded and painted on the wall in dripping letters. "Liar, home wrecker, your turn next." Beta Marcus arrived moments after, his face grim. We've got a problem. Several of Thessa's supporters have left with her. There's talk of them forming a resistance trying to force the council to reverse the decision. How? Calith asked, staring at the destruction. By making this territory unstable. Attacks on supply lines, maybe challenging Ronan's leadership directly. Marcus met her eyes. And by making you disappear, you're the symbol of this whole mess. If you're gone, Thessa's supporters can claim you lied and fled. So I'm a hostage to politics. You're a piece on a board you didn't ask to be on, Marcus corrected. But you're on it now. That night, alone in hastily assigned new quarters with guards posted thick outside, Calith made a decision. She'd survive by staying quiet, by enduring, by making herself small. It had kept her alive, but it also enabled her abuse. Now, she could keep hiding, keep being the victim everyone saw her as. Or she could become something else. She didn't know what yet. She didn't even know if it was possible. But somewhere deep, in the place where her wolf had gone silent years ago, something stirred, not the wolf itself, that was still trapped, still blocked, but something adjacent to it, a recognition that survival wasn't enough anymore. If the pack was going to tear itself apart over her, she'd make damn sure it was worth it. The next morning, she went to find Alpha Ronan with a proposal that would either save the pack or destroy what was left of her life. Ronan looked up from the map spread across his desk when Calith entered without knocking. His eyebrows rose at the breach of protocol, but he didn't call her out for it. I need to claim my rights, she said before he could speak. What rights? Wolf rights. Pack law states that anyone with wolf blood has the right to formal recognition, even if they can't shift. I want that recognition, publicly. Ronan leaned back in his chair, studying her. Why now? Because right now I'm just a servant, a victim, something that happened to other people, not someone who matters. Calith's hands were steady despite her racing pulse. If I have formal status, I'm harder to disappear. Thessa's supporters can't just make me vanish without breaking pack law. They can still make your life hell. They're already doing that. She moved closer to the desk. But if I'm recognized, I have legal standing. I can testify in pack matters. I can request protection formally. I stop being invisible. You'll also become a bigger target, Ronan pointed out. Right now you're a servant caught in politics. With formal status, you're a player in your own right. That makes you dangerous to them. Good. The word came out harder than Calith intended. Let them see me as dangerous. Maybe then they'll think twice before cornering me in dark hallways. Ronan was quiet for a long moment, his dark eyes searching her face. This isn't about protection. You're planning something. I'm planning to survive. The terms have just changed. Calith met his gaze directly. Will you grant the recognition or not? The council will need to approve it. Given the current climate, that's not guaranteed. Then make it happen anyway. You're the alpha. Assert your authority. Something flickered in Ronan's expression. Surprise. Maybe respect. You're giving me orders now? I'm suggesting a strategy. There's a difference. Calith softened slightly. Your authority is already being questioned because of me. Show them you won't be pushed around. Make a unilateral decision and dare them to challenge it. That could backfire spectacularly. Everything I do backfires. At least this way I'll have legal standing when it does. She paused. Please, Alpha. I've spent 6 years being nothing. Let me be something, even if it's just officially recognized prey. Ronan stood, walked to the window. The morning light caught the tension in his shoulders. If I do this, the opposition will call it favoritism. They'll say I'm elevating you to justify the exile, that we're conspiring together. They already think that. They'll push harder, maybe challenge me directly for leadership. Then you'll deal with that when it comes. Calith joined him at the window. But hiding me away, treating me like a political liability, that makes you look weak, like you're ashamed of the decision you made. Ronan's jaw tightened. I'm not ashamed. Then prove it. Give me status. Show the pack that truth matters more than politics. He turned to look at her, and Calith saw the calculation in his eyes, the alpha weighing risks, measuring consequences. Finally, he nodded. Council meeting in 2 hours. I'll announce it then. But Calith, his voice dropped. This makes everything more dangerous for both of us. You understand that? I've understood that since the moment I told the truth about Thessa. Calith managed a thin smile. Might as well be dangerous with legal rights. The council chamber felt like a trap when Calith entered 2 hours later. The ranked wolves filled their seats with hostile energy, their conversations cutting off abruptly when they noticed her. She took a position near the back wall, acutely aware of how exposed she was. Ronan called the meeting to order with clipped efficiency. We're here to address the ongoing instability following Luna Thessa's exile. Several matters require immediate attention. Starting with why that creature is here, Garrett interrupted, gesturing at Calith. This is a council meeting. Servants aren't allowed. She's not here as a servant, Ronan said calmly. As of this moment, Calith Vorn is formally recognized as a wolf of this pack, with all rights and protections that status entails. The chamber erupted. Wolves jumped to their feet, shouting over each other. Garrett's face went purple with rage. You can't do that. She doesn't have a wolf. She's broken. Pack law doesn't require an active wolf for recognition, Ronan countered, his voice cutting through the chaos. Only wolf blood. Calith's bloodline is verified. She has the right. This is insane, Celine hissed. You're legitimizing her lies, giving her power. I'm giving her what she's legally entitled to. If you have a problem with pack law, challenge it formally. Ronan's eyes swept the room. But the recognition stands. Elder Cormac stood slowly. Alpha Ronan, with respect, this seems politically motivated. The timing is suspect. The timing is necessary. Calith's safety has been compromised. Formal recognition provides protection. Protection you're granting because you feel guilty, Garrett spat. Guilty for falling for her manipulation, for exiling our Luna based on lies and forged journals. The journal wasn't forged, Elder Moira interrupted icily. I verified the handwriting myself. Multiple experts confirmed it. Experts you chose, Celine shot back. This whole thing reeks of conspiracy. The Alpha, his mother, this broken thing, all working together to remove Thessa because she was too strong, too independent. Calith had been silent, but that accusation snapped something inside her. She stepped forward before she could stop herself. You want to know what's really happening here? You're so invested in believing Thessa was innocent that you'll invent conspiracies rather than face reality. She tortured me for years. That's not politics, that's sadism. And the fact that you'd rather believe in some elaborate plot than accept that your precious Luna was a monster says everything about this pack's priorities. How dare you? Garrett started. I dare because I have nothing left to lose, Calith cut him off. You've already decided I'm a liar. Already made me a target, so fine, hate me, blame me, but don't pretend this is about truth or justice. This is about you being too cowardly to admit you failed people who needed protection. The silence that followed was absolute. Then Garrett moved, his wolf rising so close to the surface that his eyes flashed amber. You don't get to lecture us about courage, broken thing. You're an insult to everything we are. Enough. Ronan's command cracked like a whip. Calith's recognition is official. The matter is closed. We have actual pack business to address. No. Garrett's voice was cold. The matter isn't closed, not by a long shot. You want to abuse your authority, Alpha? Then we'll respond according to pack law. I formally challenge your leadership. The chamber went deathly still. Leadership challenges were rare, brutal, and binding. If Garrett won, Ronan would be exiled or killed. If Ronan won, Garrett would face the same fate. Ronan's expression didn't change. On what grounds? Compromised judgment, abuse of power, allowing personal feelings to override pack welfare. Garrett stepped into the center of the room. You exiled our Luna to protect your pet broken wolf. You're granting her status to justify your mistakes. You're weak, Ronan, and weakness gets packs killed. I accept your challenge, Ronan said quietly. When? 3 days, new moon, combat to first blood, or submission. Garrett smiled coldly. Try not to let your little project distract you before then. The meeting dissolved into chaos, but Calith barely heard it. She'd just triggered a leadership challenge that could destroy everything. The realization hit her like a physical blow. Her bid for recognition, her refusal to stay quiet, had pushed Garrett into direct confrontation. Beta Marcus caught her arm as she tried to leave. That was stupid. I know. Garrett's a skilled fighter. Ronan will probably win, but it's not guaranteed. Marcus's grip tightened. If Garrett takes leadership, the first thing he'll do is have you killed. I know that too, Caleth pulled free. But I'm tired of being the reason people stay quiet. If standing up gets me killed, at least I'll die loud. The next 3 days passed in a blur of tension. Ronan spent most of his time in preparation, training, strategizing, meeting with his supporters. Caleth was kept under heavy guard, more prisoner than protected party. Garrett's faction made their presence known through small acts of aggression, supplies accidentally destroyed, guards loyal to Ronan reassigned, whispers that spread like poison through the fortress. On the second day, Elder Moira visited Caleth's quarters. "This is partially my fault," she said without preamble. "I pushed Ronan to do the right thing. I didn't consider it would lead here." "It was always going to lead here," Caleth replied. She stood by the window, watching wolves train in the yard below. "The pack was broken before I said anything. I just made it visible." "Garrett will kill you if he wins, you know that. Everyone keeps telling me that, like I'm not aware of the target on my back." Caleth turned. "What do you want me to do? Recant? Flee? I want you to survive. That's what your mother would have wanted." The mention of her mother hit harder than expected. "My mother wanted me to survive no matter what." "Well, I did. I survived torture, humiliation, 6 years of hell. And you know what I learned? Survival isn't enough, not anymore." "So you'd rather die making a point?" "I'd rather live making a difference. But if I can't have that, then yes, I'll die loud enough that people can't ignore what happened anymore." Caleth's voice hardened. "This pack needs to break. It's rotten at the core. Maybe my death will be the thing that finally forces people to see it." Moira looked old suddenly, worn down by years of compromise. "You're braver than I ever was." "I'm just done being afraid." The night before the challenge, Ronan summoned Caleth to his study. He looked exhausted, the weight of leadership carved into every line of his face. "If I lose tomorrow," he started. "You won't." "If I lose," he continued firmly, "Beta Marcus has orders to get you out. There's a safe house 2 territories over, wolves who owe me favors. You'll go there." "I'm not running." "You're not dying for my mistakes either." Ronan moved around the desk, standing close enough that Caleth could smell pine and exhaustion on him. "This challenge happened because I chose to protect you. I don't regret that choice, but I won't let it cost your life." "It's my life to cost." Caleth met his eyes. "I made the decision to push for recognition. I knew the risks." You're 22 years old. You've survived more than most wolves endure in a lifetime. But you don't have to be a martyr." "I'm not trying to be a martyr. I'm trying to matter. There's a difference." She paused. "Win tomorrow, Alpha. Not for me. For every wolf in this pack who needs the system to change. You're the only one willing to try." Ronan's hand came up, almost touching her face, then dropped. "If I win, things get harder. Garrett has supporters who won't accept his defeat. This territory will be unstable for months, maybe years. Then we'll deal with that when it comes." Caleth managed a tired smile. "One apocalypse at a time." The challenge took place in the main training yard at dawn. The entire pack gathered, packed so tight that Caleth could barely breathe through the press of bodies and aggressive scents. She stood with Marcus and Moira, guards forming a tight circle around them. Ronan and Garrett faced each other in the center clearing, both stripped to the waist, their wolves visible in their eyes. The rules were simple. Fight until one submitted or bled enough to incapacitate. Death was allowed, but not required. Elder Cormac, as the senior neutral council member, presided. "This challenge is witnessed by the pack. The winner leads. The loser accepts exile or death. Begin." They circled each other, and Caleth saw immediately that Garrett was faster. He moved with predatory grace, his wolf fully integrated in a way Ronan's wasn't. The first exchange happened in a blur. Garrett struck, Ronan blocked, both pulled back assessing. "Your pet's watching," Garrett taunted. "Try not to disappoint her." Ronan didn't respond, just adjusted his stance. They clashed again, and this time blood appeared, a gash across Garrett's shoulder. Not deep, but first blood went to Ronan. The crowd's roar was deafening. Garrett's eyes flashed pure amber, his wolf surging forward. The next series of exchanges was brutal. Punch, block, kick. dodge. Both wolves bleeding now, both breathing hard. Ronan was stronger, but Garrett was quicker. The question was which advantage would matter more. Then Garrett made his move. He feinted left, and when Ronan committed to the block, Garrett's knee came up hard into Ronan's ribs. Caleth heard the crack from 20 feet away. Ronan went down, gasping, and Garrett pressed the advantage. "Submit," Garrett snarled, his hand around Ronan's throat. "Submit, and I'll let you live in exile." Ronan's response was to drive his elbow into Garrett's temple. The challenger reeled back, and Ronan surged to his feet despite the broken ribs. Blood ran from both wolves now, painting the dirt red. They came together again, and this time there was nothing controlled about it. Pure violence, stripped of technique. Ronan's strength against Garrett's speed. Both wolves desperate and dangerous. The crowd screamed encouragement, bloodlust thick in the air. Caleth watched and felt something strange happening inside her. Not fear, she was past fear. Not hope. Hope was too fragile for this moment. Something else. A vibration deep in her chest where her wolf had been silent for 6 years. Garrett got Ronan in a chokehold, cutting off air. Ronan's face went red, then purple. He was losing. The realization hit Caleth like a physical blow. Ronan was going to lose, and then Garrett would kill him and come for her, and everything would have been for nothing. The vibration in her chest intensified, almost painful now. "Submit," Garrett roared. "Submit or die." Ronan's eyes found Caleth across the crowd. Even oxygen deprived, even beaten, his expression said clear as words, "Run, get out, survive." And something inside Caleth snapped, not broke, snapped into place, like a bone setting after years of being fractured. The vibration exploded outward, and suddenly she could feel it. Her wolf. Not blocked, not gone, but trapped behind a wall of trauma so thick she'd forgotten it existed. "Stop," she heard herself say, but her voice was wrong, layered, human and wolf speaking together. The crowd went silent. Even Garrett loosened his grip enough for Ronan to gasp air. Every eye turned to Caleth. She was shaking, her skin burning like fever. The wolf inside her was clawing its way up, 6 years of suppression breaking apart in violent waves. It hurt. Everything hurt. But underneath the pain was something she'd thought lost forever. Power. "The challenge is void," she said, her voice still doubled. "I invoke first witness right." Elder Cormac looked shocked. "What?" "First witness right. Pack Law, subsection 12. If a recognized wolf claims a challenge is based on false grounds, they can invoke first witness right to prove it. The challenge is suspended until the truth is established." "That law hasn't been used in decades," Cormac stammered. "And you'd need to prove—" "I can prove Garrett's accusations are false." Caleth stepped forward, and the crowd parted instinctively. Something in her scent had changed, something that made even hostile wolves move aside. "He claimed Ronan's judgment is compromised regarding me, that I'm manipulating him, but the truth is simpler." She stopped in the center of the clearing, facing Garrett directly. The wolf inside her was so close to the surface now that her vision sharpened, her sense of smell intensifying to painful levels. "You were part of it," she said, "part of Thessa's abuse. You knew what she was doing to me and you approved. That's why you're really fighting this. Not because Ronan's judgment is compromised, but because if the pack starts investigating Thessa's allies, you're finished." Garrett's face went white. "That's a lie." "Is it? Then explain why your scent is on the whip Thessa kept in her chambers. Explain why 3 servants testified seeing you leave her rooms late at night. Explain why you have such a vested interest in making sure I disappear. I never— You helped her." Caleth's voice was ice. "Maybe you didn't wield the whip yourself, but you enabled it, protected her, covered for her. And now that she's gone, you're terrified the truth will come out." The crowd's energy shifted, suspicion turning toward Garrett. He looked around wildly, seeing his support crumbling. "She's making this up. There's no evidence." "There's a journal," Elder Moira called out. Thessa mentioned her loyal guardian several times. "We assumed she meant pack guards, but the descriptions match you, Garrett, perfectly." Garrett lunged for Caleth. Pure instinct, no thought behind it. Just a desperate man trying to silence the truth. And Caleth's wolf exploded out to meet him. The transformation hurt worse than anything Thessa had ever done to her. bones breaking and reforming, skin tearing, muscles reshaping. She screamed, but the scream turned into a howl halfway through. And then she was on 4 legs, gray fur streaked with white, smaller than most wolves, but whole. Complete. Garrett froze mid-lunge, shock overriding aggression. The entire pack went silent, staring at the impossible. The broken wolf transformed at last. Calith's wolf snarled, and the sound carried 6 years of suppressed rage. She didn't attack, just stood there, teeth bared, making it clear what would happen if Garrett completed his lunge. He backed away slowly, hands raised. "How? Trauma blocks break," Ronan said hoarsely, still on the ground but sitting up now. Given the right trigger, given enough reason. He looked at Calith with something like awe. "Welcome back." Calith shifted back to human, the transformation smoother this time. She knelt in the dirt, naked and shaking, but her eyes were clear. "The challenge is void," she repeated. "Garrett's accusations are proven false. He has no grounds." Elder Cormac looked to the crowd, reading the energy. "Does anyone dispute this?" Silence. Even Garrett's strongest supporters looked uncertain now, calculating whether association with him was worth the risk. "Then the challenge is voided. Alpha Ronan retains leadership." Cormac's voice was firm. "Garrett, you have until sunset to leave this territory. Your exile is permanent." Garrett looked around desperately, but found no allies. Slowly, he nodded. "This isn't over." "Yes," Calith said quietly. "It is." As guards moved in to escort Garrett away, Calith felt hands wrapping a cloak around her shoulders. Beta Marcus, his expression complicated. "That was the craziest thing I've ever seen, and I've seen some crazy things." "I surprised myself," Calith admitted. Her entire body hurt, her wolf exhausted from 6 years of dormancy. But underneath the pain was something she barely recognized: freedom. Ronan was being helped to his feet, healers swarming him. His eyes found Calith across the clearing, and something passed between them. Understanding, maybe. Recognition of what had just shifted between them and the pack. Elder Moira appeared, pressing a cup of water into Calith's shaking hands. "How did you know?" "About Garrett?" "I didn't, not for certain." Calith drank, the cold water shocking her system. "But I remembered things. His scent in places it shouldn't be, the way Thessa looked at him sometimes. I gambled that if I pushed, something would crack." "And your wolf?" "I don't know. Maybe seeing Ronan about to die. Maybe finally having a reason to break through." Calith looked at her hand, still trembling with aftershocks of transformation. "I thought it was gone forever. I was wrong." "Your mother would be proud," Moira said softly. Calith thought about that. About 6 years of survival, of promises kept through torture and humiliation. About a wolf that had waited, patient and trapped, for the moment she was strong enough to hold it. "Yeah," she said finally. Maybe she would. The crowd dispersed slowly, wolves talking in hushed groups. The power structure had shifted in ways no one had predicted. Thessa exiled. Garrett exposed and banished. Ronan's leadership affirmed. And Calith, broken, invisible Calith, now whole and undeniable. But as Beta Marcus led her back to her quarters through corridors that felt different now, Calith knew this wasn't victory. It was intermission. Thessa's remaining supporters wouldn't forget. Garrett had allies who'd want revenge. And somewhere beyond the territory, 2 exiled wolves were plotting their return. The fortress felt different too, less like a prison, more like a battleground. And Calith was no longer a victim hiding in the margins. She was a player now, whether she wanted to be or not. That night, unable to sleep, she stood at her window and looked out over the moonlit mountains. Her wolf stirred inside her, still adjusting to freedom, and for the first time in 6 years, Calith felt something besides fear. She felt dangerous. The question was what she'd do with that danger, and whether it would save the pack or destroy what was left of it. A knock at her door pulled her from thoughts. She opened it to find Ronan, bandaged but standing on his own. "We need to talk," he said, "about what comes next." Calith stepped aside, letting him in. Whatever came next, at least she'd face it with teeth. Her wolf growled agreement, and somewhere deep in the mountains, Calith could have sworn she heard an answering howl. Distant, hostile and coming closer. Ronan stood in the doorway, his bandaged ribs making each breath visible. The distant howl faded into mountain silence, but its threat hung in the air between them. That was Thessa, Calith said flatly. Or Garrett. Or both. Ronan moved into the room, closing the door behind him. They're not far. Maybe waiting for reinforcements. Maybe just watching. Let them watch. Calith turned from the window, and her wolf stirred beneath her skin. Still strange, still new, but undeniably present. We have bigger problems than two exiled wolves nursing grudges. Such as? Such as half this pack still thinks I'm a manipulative liar who destroyed their Luna for personal gain. Such as the other half doesn't know what to think now that I'm apparently not as broken as advertised. She crossed her arms. My transformation didn't fix the pack's fractures. It just made them more complicated. Ronan lowered himself carefully onto the room's single chair, his hand pressed to his ribs. I need you to do something, and you're going to hate it. That's a terrible opening. I need you to address the pack, publicly. Explain what happened to your wolf, why it came back now, what you want moving forward. Calith laughed, the sound harsh. You want me to perform, show them the broken thing made whole, inspire them with my survival story. I want you to give them context, Ronan corrected. Right now you're a mystery. Mysteries make people uncomfortable. Uncomfortable people make bad decisions. Bad decisions like exiling their alpha? Exactly like that. His dark eyes were serious. We won this round, Calith. Barely. But Thessa's supporters aren't gone, just quiet. They're waiting for an excuse to challenge me again. If you stay silent, stay mysterious, you become that excuse. And if I speak up, and they don't believe me? If they think I'm lying about the trauma block, pretending my wolf was trapped to gain sympathy? Then at least you tried. Ronan shifted, wincing. But I think some of them will listen, especially after today. You risked exposure to save me from losing that challenge. People noticed. Calith moved to the window again, looking out at the fortress she'd survived, but never belonged to. Her reflection in the glass showed someone she barely recognized. Still thin, still scarred, but with eyes that held something new. Defiance, maybe? Or just exhaustion with being afraid? When? She asked. Tomorrow, noon, main hall. Ronan stood slowly. I'll have healers there. You'll need to demonstrate the transformation, show them it's real. Of course you will. Calith's voice was tired. Can't just take my word for it. Need proof. Would you take someone's word without proof, after everything that's happened? The question was fair. Calith hated that it was fair. Fine. Tomorrow. But I'm doing this my way. No script, no performance. I say what I need to say. I wouldn't have it any other way. Ronan paused at the door. For what it's worth, what you did today, standing up for the truth even when it meant exposing yourself, that took more courage than anything I've seen in years of leadership. Courage or desperation, hard to tell the difference sometimes. After he left, Calith stood alone in the darkness, her wolf pacing restlessly beneath her skin. 6 years of silence, and now it wouldn't settle. She could feel its wariness, its anger at having been trapped so long. But underneath that was something else. Recognition that they'd survived together, human and wolf, separated but never truly apart. We're going to need each other tomorrow, she whispered to the wolf inside her. Try not to make me look more insane than I already do. The wolf's response was a low growl that might have been agreement or just irritation. Either way, they were in this together now. Morning came too fast. Calith dressed in simple clothes provided by Beta Marcus, sturdy pants and a loose shirt that would survive a transformation. Her hands shook as she braided her hair, muscle memory from years of preparing for Thessa's inspections. The knock came at 11. Marcus stood outside with 4 guards. Protective detail, he explained. Non-negotiable. I wasn't going to argue. Calith stepped into the corridor, and the guards fell into formation around her. The walk to the main hall felt like a death march, every step taking her closer to judgment she hadn't asked for. The hall was packed. More wolves than had attended Thessa's exile hearing, all of them watching with expressions ranging from curious to hostile. Calith saw Celine in the crowd, her face carved from ice. saw other former supporters of Thessa scattered throughout, their body language screaming aggression. Ronan stood at the front, his presence commanding despite the visible bandages. When Calith approached, he nodded once, permission and warning combined. "We're here," Ronan began, his voice carrying through the hall, "because yesterday something impossible happened. A wolf, we all believe broken, transformed before our eyes. Many of you have questions. Calith Vorn has agreed to provide answers." He stepped aside, and suddenly Calith was alone in front of hundreds of judgment-filled eyes. Her wolf stirred anxiously, feeding off her fear. "I don't have a speech prepared," she started, her voice steadier than she felt. "I'm not good at speeches, so I'll just tell you what happened, and you can decide what to believe." She took a breath, gathering herself. 6 years ago, during my first transformation trial, something went wrong. I shifted halfway and stopped. Couldn't complete the change, couldn't pull back. The healers said it was a psychological block, trauma interfering with the wolf-human bond. They were right. A murmur ran through the crowd. Calith pushed through it. "The trauma was my father's death. He was killed by rogues when I was 15. I watched it happen. Watched him fight in wolf form and lose, watched him die while I hid because I was too young, too weak, too human." Her voice cracked slightly. "When my time came to transform, all I could think about was that moment. The fear locked my wolf away." "So you're saying fear broke you?" Someone called out. "That makes you weak, not sympathetic." "Yes," Calith said simply. "I was weak, terrified, traumatized, and that weakness made me a target. Luna Thessa saw someone vulnerable and decided to make it worse. For 6 years she tortured me. And for 6 years my wolf stayed trapped because I was so focused on surviving each day that I couldn't face the original trauma." "Then what changed?" Elder Cormac asked, his tone more curious than hostile. "Why yesterday?" "Because yesterday I watched Alpha Ronan about to die defending a decision he made to protect me. And I realized that if I let fear keep me broken, if I let my father's death define the rest of my life, then Thessa won. Everything she did to me, all the torture and humiliation, it would have been for nothing if I died still afraid." Calith met Cormac's eyes. "My wolf didn't break free because I stopped being afraid. It broke free because I finally had something worth being afraid for." The silence that followed felt different, less hostile, more contemplative. "Prove it," Celine's voice cut through. "Prove your wolf is real, and this isn't some trick." Calith had expected this. She looked to the healers standing near the front, 3 of them, including the pack's senior healer, an older woman named Risa. "Healer Risa, can you verify a transformation? Confirm it's legitimate?" Risa stepped forward, her professional mask in place. "Yes, there are markers we look for: bone density changes, muscle reformation patterns, scent alterations. A fake transformation or possession would show inconsistencies." "Then verify mine." Calith started unbuttoning her shirt, aware of every eye tracking the movement. She stripped to her underclothes, letting them see the scars that covered her body, heard the gasps, the murmurs. Some had seen the scars at the hearing, but seeing them again in full light made them undeniable. "These are real," she said quietly. "Every mark, every burn, every whip line. Luna Thessa's artwork documented over 6 years. So when I transform, remember that this body survived all of this and still managed to heal enough to shift." She closed her eyes, reaching for the wolf inside her. It came easier this time, the path worn smooth by yesterday's breakthrough. The transformation hurt, bones breaking and reforming, skin stretching, muscles tearing and rebuilding, but the pain felt clean, purposeful. When she opened her eyes, she was on 4 legs. The world looked different from this angle, sharper. Sense overwhelmed her: fear, curiosity, aggression, all mixing into a complicated tapestry. Her wolf wanted to react to the hostile sense, wanted to challenge and defend, but Calith held control. Healer Risa approached slowly, her hands gentle as she examined Calith's wolf form, checked bone structure, muscle definition, scent markers. The inspection took several minutes, thorough and professional. Finally, Risa stepped back. "It's legitimate. Full transformation, all markers present and correct. This is her wolf, not a trick or possession." Kalith shifted back, and this time the transformation was smoother, almost natural. She dressed quickly, aware of the shifting energy in the room. So she has a wolf now, Garrett's brother, a wolf named Derek, spoke up. That doesn't erase her lies about Thessa, doesn't make her trustworthy. You're right, Kalith said, surprising him. Having a wolf doesn't make me trustworthy, doesn't make me good or noble or worthy of your respect. It just makes me whole. What I do with that wholeness, that's what should determine your trust. Pretty words, Derek sneered. What do you want, really? You've destroyed our Luna, caused a leadership challenge, fractured the pack. What's your endgame? Kalith looked at Ronan, then back at the crowd. I want to make sure what happened to me can't happen to anyone else. I want a pack where strength doesn't mean permission to abuse, where authority comes with accountability, where someone in trouble can speak up without fearing they'll be ignored or punished for it. You want to change everything, Celine said coldly. Undermine our traditions, make us weak. I want to change a system that allowed a Luna to torture a servant for 6 years while everyone looked the other way. If you think that system is worth preserving, then yes, I want to undermine it completely. The crowd erupted in argument, wolves shouting at each other, at her, at Ronan. The Alpha let it continue for several minutes before calling for order. Enough! Here's what's going to happen. Ronan's voice cut through the chaos. Kalith Vorn is a recognized wolf of this pack with full rights and protections. Anyone who has a problem with that can challenge her directly according to pack law. But the harassment stops, the threats stop, the property destruction stops. We move forward, or we destroy ourselves. Choose. And what's her role now? Elder Cormac asked. She's not a servant anymore, obviously, but she's not ranked, not trained. Where does she fit? Ronan looked at Kalith, something unreadable in his expression. That's up to her. But I'm offering her a position as pack advocate. Someone who investigates complaints, ensures fair treatment, acts as a voice for wolves who might not feel safe speaking up themselves. The offer stunned Kalith into silence. A formal position meant real power, real authority. It also meant a bigger target on her back. You're joking, Derek said flatly. You want to give her authority? She's been a wolf for 1 day. She's been surviving this pack's broken system for 6 years. That makes her more qualified than most. Ronan's tone allowed no argument. The position is offered. Kalith, do you accept? Every instinct screamed at her to refuse. To stay small, stay safe, stay invisible. But those instincts had kept her trapped and tortured for years. Time to trust different instincts. I accept, she said clearly. The meeting dissolved into chaos again, but Kalith barely heard it. She'd just accepted a role that would make her a lightning rod for every grievance and complaint in the pack, would make her enemies permanent and her allies conditional. But she'd also accepted the power to actually change things, to make sure the next terrified wolf, who couldn't shift, got help instead of torture, to hold leaders accountable instead of complicit. As the crowd dispersed, Elder Moira approached. That was either very brave or very stupid. Probably both, Kalith admitted. Thessa won't like this. Neither will her allies. You've just painted yourself as the biggest threat to their way of life. Good, Kalith met Moira's eyes. Let them see me coming. The next week proved harder than the hearing. Kalith's new role meant moving into quarters near the Alpha's wing, meant learning pack law and protocols she'd never been allowed to know as a servant. Beta Marcus became her reluctant teacher, drilling her on regulations and precedents. This subsection covers challenges to ranked wolves. Memorize it. Why? I'm not ranked. You're the pack advocate. That makes you functionally ranked, which means wolves can challenge you directly if they think you've overstepped. Marcus's expression was grim. And trust me, someone will try. The challenge came 3 days later. A wolf named Kira, one of Thessa's former attendants, accused Kalith of using her new position to spread lies about the former Luna. The accusation was thin, barely supported by evidence, but pack law allowed it. They faced each other in the training yard at sunset, watched by a smaller crowd than previous challenges, but no less invested. Kira was bigger, stronger, more experienced. But Kalith had 6 years of surviving impossible odds, and a wolf that was still angry about being caged. This is about honor, Kira announced, about defending someone who can't defend herself. This is about you refusing to accept that your beloved Luna was a sadist, Kalith corrected. But fine, let's settle it. The fight was brief and brutal. Kira had skill, but Kalith had rage. 6 years of suppressed anger channeled through her wolf. When Kira went down with Kalith's teeth at her throat, the message was clear. "Submit," Kalith growled, her wolf still riding her hard. "I submit," Kira gasped. Kalith released her, shifting back to human. Her hands were shaking, adrenaline making her dizzy. "Anyone else want to defend Thessa's honor? Form a line." No one moved. The crowd dispersed quietly, and Kalith realized she'd just established something important. She wasn't easy prey anymore. Wasn't someone who could be pushed around without consequences. Beta Marcus handed her a towel as she stood there, catching her breath. "Not bad for someone who couldn't shift a week ago." "I've been fighting my whole life," Kalith replied, "just usually not in wolf form." That night, she started her first official investigation. A complaint from a young wolf named Mira, who claimed her trainer was abusive. The details were disturbingly familiar. Excessive punishment for small mistakes, isolation tactics, verbal degradation. Kalith interviewed Mira, interviewed witnesses, documented everything with the thoroughness of someone who knew how easy it was for truth to be dismissed. When she presented her findings to the council, the trainer was removed and formally reprimanded. It was a small victory, one case among many, but it was a start. "You're making enemies," Elder Cormac observed after the hearing. "Wolves who benefited from the old system don't like oversight. But they can get used to it or leave," Kalith said. "I'm done caring about making people comfortable." Over the following weeks, a pattern emerged. Kalith investigated complaints, found evidence of abuse or neglect that had been ignored or covered up, presented it to the council. Sometimes they acted on it. Sometimes they didn't. But every case she brought forward chipped away at the culture of silence that had enabled Thessa's behavior. She also started training, real training, not just survival skills. Beta Marcus put her through drills in both human and wolf form, teaching her combat techniques and pack tactics. Her wolf was still learning its own body, still adjusting to freedom, but it was getting stronger. "You're improving," Marcus said after a particularly brutal sparring session. "Still too reliant on aggression over technique, but improving. Aggression's worked so far. Against wolves unprepared for it, sure. Against someone trained? You'll get killed." He tossed her a water flask. "Anger makes you dangerous, but also predictable. Learn to fight cold." The advice stuck with her. Over the next weeks, she worked on controlling the rage that fueled her wolf, channeling it instead of being controlled by it. Learn to fight strategically, to read opponents, to exploit weaknesses without losing herself in bloodlust. She was mid-session one afternoon when a scout came running into the training yard, his face pale. "Alpha, we've got movement on the northern border. Multiple wolves, organized formation." Ronan appeared immediately from his study. "How many?" "At least 20, maybe more. They're not trying to hide their approach." "Thessa," Kalith said, her wolf already rising. "She's back with reinforcements." The fortress mobilized within minutes. Warriors to defensive positions, civilians to protected areas, scouts spreading out to gather intelligence. Kalith found herself in the Alpha's war room, surrounded by ranked wolves planning defense. "They're too organized to be random rogues," Beta Marcus reported, studying the scouts' maps. "This is planned, military formation." "Thessa must have found allies," Elder Moira said grimly. "Other packs sympathetic to her cause." "Or just opportunistic," Ronan replied. "We've been fractured, unstable. We look weak right now, perfect target for territorial expansion." "What do they want?" Kalith asked. "Probably you," Derek said bluntly. "Dead or handed over as a gesture of good faith. Maybe both." Ronan's expression darkened. "No one gets handed over. We defend our own." "Even her?" Derek gestured at Kalith. "Even though she's the reason we're in this mess?" "She's the reason the mess is visible," Ronan corrected coldly. "The rot was always there. She just forced us to see it. Now we deal with the consequences together or we fall apart. Your choice, Derek." The wolf deflated slightly. "Together then, but I still don't like her." "I don't need you to like me," Kalith said. "I need you to fight. Can you do that?" Derek's jaw tightened, but he nodded. The attack came at dawn, coordinated and vicious. Thessa's force hit 3 entry points simultaneously, overwhelming the outer defenses through sheer numbers. Calith fought alongside Marcus's unit, her wolf finally getting to use all the rage she'd been learning to control. The battle was chaos, wolves tearing at each other, blood on stone, the air thick with screams and snarls. Calith moved through it focused and cold, exactly as Marcus had taught her. Find weak points, exploit them, move on. No wasted energy, no lost control. She just brought down a large gray wolf when she caught a familiar scent. Thessa, somewhere close. Her wolf's hackles rose, 6 years of trauma and fury condensing into pure hunt instinct. She found the former Luna near the main gate, fighting through defenders with brutal efficiency. Thessa saw her at the same moment, and something like satisfaction crossed her beautiful face. "There you are, broken thing. I was hoping we'd meet again." "I'm not broken anymore," Calith replied, her wolf surging forward. They collided in a tangle of teeth and claws. Thessa was skilled, experienced, her wolf fully mature and deadly. But Calith had something Thessa didn't. A wolf that had been trapped for 6 years and was absolutely done with being controlled by fear. The fight was savage. Thessa drew blood first, tearing into Calith's shoulder. Calith responded by going for Thessa's throat, missing by inches. They broke apart, circled, came together again. "You can't win," Thessa snarled. "You're nothing. You've always been nothing." "Then why are you here?" Calith countered. "If I'm nothing, why bring an army to kill me?" Thessa's response was to lunge again, but this time Calith was ready. She sidestepped, used Thessa's momentum against her, and sank her teeth into the former Luna's exposed flank. Thessa screamed, shifting back to human instinctively. "Submit," Calith demanded, standing over her in wolf form. "Never." Thessa's eyes blazed with hatred. "I'd rather die than submit to you." "That can be arranged," Ronan's voice cut through. He stood nearby in human form, bloodied but alive. Around them, the battle was ending. Thessa's forces pulling back, overwhelmed by the fortress's defenders. Thessa looked around, seeing her failure written in dead allies and retreating wolves. Her army hadn't been enough. Her plan had failed. "Exile wasn't enough for you?" Ronan asked coldly. "You had to come back and try to destroy what you couldn't control?" "This pack was mine," Thessa spat. "You had no right to take it from me, to believe her lies over my truth. Your truth was torture and abuse hidden behind authority. That's not leadership. That's tyranny." Ronan gestured to the guards. "Take her to the cells, real cells this time. Maximum security." As they dragged Thessa away, still screaming threats, Calith shifted back to human. Her shoulder bled steadily, but she'd survive. They'd all survived. The fortress had held. In the aftermath, as healers tended wounded and warriors counted their dead, Calith found herself standing with Ronan overlooking the valley. The sun was rising, painting the mountains in shades of gold and red. "We lost 8 wolves," Ronan said quietly. 15 more seriously wounded. "I'm sorry." "Don't be. This was Thessa's choice, not yours." He turned to look at her. "You fought well today. Saved Marcus's unit when they were surrounded." "I did what needed doing." "You did more than that." Ronan's expression was complicated. "The pack saw you fight for them. Fight to protect them, not just yourself. That matters more than you know." "Does it change anything? Do they still hate me?" "Some do. Some always will." Ronan's hand came up, almost touching her injured shoulder, then dropped. "But others are starting to see what I saw in you from the beginning. Strength that survived the impossible. Courage that refused to stay quiet. The kind of wolf this pack needs." Calith didn't know what to say to that. So she just nodded and looked back at the sunrise, her wolf finally quiet inside her, finally at peace. They'd survived. Against Thessa, against her army, against a broken system that had nearly destroyed them both. And tomorrow, they'd start the harder work, building something better from the ashes of what had burned. The rebuilding started before the bodies were even cold. Ronan had the damaged gates reinforced by noon, supply lines secured by evening. Calith watched him move through the fortress like a force of nature, directing repairs and bolstering morale with the kind of leadership that reminded everyone why he was alpha. She spent the day helping healers tend the wounded, her new position as pack advocate meaning she could move freely between areas usually restricted to servants. Some wolves still eyed her with suspicion, but others, especially those she'd fought beside, nodded acknowledgement as she passed. Progress. Slow, painful, but real. By nightfall, exhaustion hit her like a physical blow. She was heading back to her quarters when Beta Marcus intercepted her in the corridor. Council meeting, now. Alpha wants you there. I'm covered in blood and I haven't slept in 20 hours. Neither has anyone else. Come on. The council chamber held fewer wolves than usual, only those essential to immediate decisions. Ronan stood at the head of the table, maps spread before him, showing territorial boundaries and neighboring pack positions. Thessa's attack revealed something important, he began without preamble. She had help. The Blackridge pack supplied at least half her forces. Elder Cormac frowned. Blackridge has no alliance with us. Why would they risk involvement? Because they thought we were weak, fractured, easy pickings. Ronan's finger traced the border between territories. They used Thessa as a test. If she'd succeeded in killing me or destabilizing us further, Blackridge would have moved in to restore order, meaning they'd have taken our territory. So what do we do? Derek asked. We're in no shape for a prolonged conflict. We make an example of Thessa, publicly. Ronan looked around the table. Tomorrow, we hold a formal trial, present all evidence of her crimes, not just against Calith, but against pack law itself. We prove she acted outside pack authority, making her actions treasonous rather than political. That's a death sentence, Elder Moira said quietly. Yes, and we broadcast it to every neighboring pack. Show them that we're not weak, we're cleaning house. That anyone who mistakes our internal reforms for vulnerability will face the same consequences. Calith's stomach turned. She'd wanted Thessa punished, but execution felt different than exile. More permanent, more final. Is there another option? She found herself asking. Everyone turned to look at her. Ronan's expression was unreadable. You're arguing for mercy? After everything she did to you? I'm arguing for clarity. Calith met his eyes. If we execute her for attacking the fortress, we're just another pack using violence to solve problems. But if we execute her for systematic abuse of power, for creating a culture of fear that nearly destroyed us from within, then we're making a statement about what we won't tolerate anymore. Those aren't mutually exclusive, Derek pointed out. No, but the emphasis matters. Which crime do we prioritize? The external attack or the internal corruption? Calith looked around the table. One makes us look defensive. The other makes us look principled. Silence fell as the council absorbed that distinction. Finally, Elder Cormac nodded slowly. She has a point. We execute Thessa as a traitor to pack law. The message is about justice. We execute her as an enemy combatant. It's just revenge. Justice, then, Ronan decided. The trial focuses on abuse of authority. The attack on the fortress is secondary evidence of her unwillingness to accept legitimate consequences. The meeting continued into details. Who would testify, what evidence would be presented, how to ensure the trial was seen as legitimate rather than political theater. Calith contributed where she could, but exhaustion was making her thoughts fuzzy. Finally, Marcus dismissed her with a jerk of his head toward the door. Go sleep, tomorrow's going to be brutal. She made it to her quarters and collapsed onto the bed still fully clothed. Sleep came immediately, deep and dreamless. For the first time in 6 years, she didn't have nightmares about Thessa's chambers, or the whip, or the cold storage rooms. Her wolf curled up inside her, content and quiet, and Calith fell into darkness, feeling almost safe. Morning brought a different kind of anxiety. The trial was scheduled for noon, but preparation started at dawn. Calith found herself in the bathing rooms with Elder Moira, who'd insisted on helping her prepare. You'll be the primary witness, Moira explained, working soap through Calith's hair. Your testimony needs to be clear, detailed, and unemotional. The moment you seem vindictive, Thessa's supporters will use it to claim bias. How do I testify unemotionally about 6 years of torture? You report facts, dates, injuries, specific incidents. You let the facts speak for themselves. Moira's hands were gentle, maternal, in a way Calith hadn't experienced since her mother died. The scars on your body are evidence. Your survival is evidence. You don't need to convince anyone of your pain. They can see it. After the bath, Moira helped her dress in formal clothes, simple but well made, appropriate for a recognized pack member rather than a servant. The difference felt significant. Kalith studied her reflection in the polished mirror and barely recognized herself. "Your mother would be proud," Moira said softly. "You keep saying that. You didn't know her." "I knew her well enough. She came to me once, about a year before she died. Asked what protections existed for wolves who couldn't shift." Moira's expression turned sad. "I told her pack law provided for them, that they'd be cared for. I was wrong. Or rather, the law existed, but enforcement didn't. I've regretted that conversation for 6 years." Kalith turned. "She knew? That I might not be able to transform?" "She suspected. You were showing signs of trauma even then, after your father's death. She wanted to make sure you'd be protected if the worst happened." Moira's eyes glistened. "Instead, the worst happened, and no one protected you at all. That's on me. On all of us who knew better and did nothing. You couldn't have known what Thessa would do. I should have checked, should have followed up, should have done 1,000 things I didn't do because it was easier to look away." Moira gripped Kalith's shoulders. "But you're giving us a chance to be better, to build a pack that actually lives up to its laws. Don't waste that chance by holding back today." The main hall was packed even tighter than during the exile hearing. Every wolf in the territory who could walk had come to witness judgment. Kalith took her position near the front, flanked by guards, and tried to ignore the hostile stares from Thessa's remaining supporters. Thessa herself was brought in shackled, her golden hair matted with blood and dirt, her face bruised from yesterday's battle. But her eyes still held defiance, still burned with the conviction that she'd done nothing wrong. Ronan presided from his elevated platform, his expression carved from stone. "We're here to determine whether Luna Thessa's actions constitute treason against pack law. The charges are systematic abuse of authority, torture of a pack member, and conspiracy to overthrow legitimate leadership through violence." "I demand the right to defend myself," Thessa announced, her voice still carrying authority despite her circumstances. "Granted. You'll have your chance to speak." Ronan gestured to the prosecutors, 3 ranked wolves who'd volunteered to present the case. "Present your evidence." What followed was 3 hours of methodical destruction. The prosecutors presented Thessa's journal, read passages that made even her supporters look uncomfortable. They called healers who testified about Kalith's injuries, their patterns consistent with sustained abuse. They presented testimony from servants who'd witnessed Thessa's cruelty, from guards who'd been ordered to look the other way, from ranked wolves who'd questioned Thessa's behavior and been punished for it. By the time they called Kalith to testify, the case was already overwhelming. But her testimony was still necessary, the victim's voice, making it personal rather than abstract. She stood before the assembly and told her story. Not emotionally, as Moira had advised, but factually. Dates and incidents, injuries and scars. She rolled up her sleeves, unbuttoned her collar, showed the physical evidence written on her body. Let them see what 6 years of discipline actually looked like. When she finished, the hall was silent except for Thessa's quiet sobbing. But Kalith knew those tears weren't remorse. They were rage at being held accountable. "Luna Thessa," Ronan said formally, "you have the right to respond to these accusations. Speak." Thessa stood, her chains rattling. When she looked up, the tears were gone, replaced by cold fury. "Everything I did for this pack's strength. Weakness is a cancer. It spreads, infects, destroys from within. Kalith was weak, broken, useless, a drain on resources. I tried to make her stronger through discipline. If she was too fragile to handle necessary correction, that's her failing, not mine." "You call torture necessary correction?" Elder Cormac asked, his voice incredulous. "I call it reality. The world doesn't coddle weakness, neither should we." Thessa's eyes swept the crowd. "You want to know why Blackridge thought we were vulnerable? Because we've gone soft. Because this alpha prioritizes feelings over strength, comfort over survival. Because we're building a pack that protects the weak instead of culling them." "We're building a pack that doesn't mistake cruelty for strength," Ronan corrected coldly. "There's a difference." "Is there? Ask your warriors if they'd rather fight beside someone they're afraid to disappoint or someone they pity. Ask them who they trust to protect their backs. The strong or the coddled? Thessa smiled without warmth. You've made this pack weak, Ronan, and when Blackridge comes back, and they will, you'll realize too late that I was right. Even if you were right about the principle, Kalith said quietly, surprising herself by speaking up, you chose the wrong method. You didn't make me stronger through torture. You made me a survivor. There's a difference. Survivors die when real threats appear, Thessa shot back. Warriors live. Then I'll become a warrior. But I'll do it without becoming a monster first. Kalith met Thessa's eyes. That's what you don't understand. Strength doesn't require cruelty. It just requires courage. And you never had that, just power, which you used to hurt people weaker than you. That's not strength. That's cowardice. Thessa lunged against her chains, but guards held her back. You self-righteous little... Enough! Ronan's voice cut through. The council will deliberate. Thessa, you'll be returned to your cell pending verdict. As guards dragged her away, still screaming obscenities, Kalith felt something settle inside her. Whatever happened next, she'd spoken her truth. Stood up to the person who'd defined 6 years of her life with fear and pain. That alone felt like victory. The council deliberated for 2 hours. When they returned, Elder Cormac read the verdict. We find Luna Thessa guilty of treason through systematic abuse of authority, torture of a pack member, and conspiracy to overthrow legitimate leadership. The sentence, by unanimous decision, is death by combat. Alpha Ronan Draven will serve as executioner, as is his right and responsibility. A murmur ran through the crowd. Death by combat was traditional, honorable even. But it also meant a fight, which meant a chance, however small, that Thessa might win her freedom. The execution will take place at sunset, Cormac continued. All pack members are invited to witness. The afternoon passed in tense preparation. Ronan spent it with his advisors, planning for contingencies if Thessa somehow won. Kalith spent it trying not to think about that possibility. Beta Marcus found her in the archives, where she'd been pretending to review case files while actually just staring at the same page for an hour. You okay? Define okay. Marcus sat down across from her. For what it's worth, Ronan will win. He's stronger, better trained, and not insane with rage. Thessa doesn't stand a chance. People said that about my transformation too, that it was impossible. Kalith closed the file. I'm tired of banking on impossible things not happening. Fair enough. Marcus was quiet for a moment. You know, when you first testified about Thessa's abuse, I didn't want to believe you. It was easier to think you were lying than to accept that I'd stood by and let it happen for 6 years. I know. But watching you fight yesterday, seeing you stand up to her today, you made it impossible to look away anymore. Made all of us face what we'd ignored. He met her eyes. That took more courage than anything I've seen in combat. So whatever happens at sunset, know that you've already changed this pack, already made a difference. Kalith didn't trust herself to speak, just nodded. Sunset came too fast. The entire pack gathered in the main yard, forming a circle around the designated combat space. Thessa was brought out in chains, which were removed once she entered the circle. She shifted immediately to wolf form, a beautiful golden creature with amber eyes full of hate. Ronan entered from the opposite side, shifting smoothly to his massive dark wolf. They circled each other, and Kalith felt her own wolf rise in response to the tension. The fight when it came was brutal and efficient. Thessa had skill, but Ronan had purpose. He didn't toy with her, didn't draw it out, just fought with the cold precision of someone doing necessary work. Within minutes, he had Thessa pinned, his jaws around her throat. She struggled briefly, then went still, accepting her death with the same defiance she'd lived with. Ronan's jaws tightened, and it was over. Luna Thessa, who'd ruled through fear and torture, died in the same yard where she'd once overseen training and celebrations. The circle of life and death completed. Ronan shifted back to human, standing over Thessa's body. Let this be a lesson. Power without accountability is tyranny. Leadership without compassion is cruelty. This pack will be better, starting now. The crowd was silent, processing what they'd witnessed. Then slowly, wolves began to howl. Not celebration exactly, more like acknowledgement. The end of an era and the uncertain beginning of another. Kalith didn't howl, just stood there feeling hollow and somehow lighter at the same time. The woman who'd defined 6 years of her life was dead. The threat was gone. But the scars remained, and no execution could erase those. Elder Moira appeared beside her. "How are you feeling?" "I don't know. I thought I'd feel relieved or vindicated or something. Instead, I just feel tired." "That's normal." "Closure doesn't always bring peace. Sometimes it just brings the space to start healing." Moira squeezed her shoulder. "Give yourself time." The next weeks brought unexpected challenges. With Thessa dead and her supporters either exiled or subdued, the pack had to actually implement the changes they'd been fighting about. Calith's role as pack advocate became crucial. She investigated complaints of abuse, implemented oversight protocols, established appeal processes for wolves who felt mistreated. It was exhausting work. Every case brought resistance from wolves who preferred the old system. Every reform faced pushback from those who saw accountability as weakness. But slowly, incrementally, things shifted. A young wolf named Petra, whose trainer had been abusive, came forward because she knew Calith would listen. The trainer was removed, and Petra got assigned to someone who actually taught instead of terrorized. Small victory, but it mattered. A servant who'd been unfairly punished for breaking dishes reported the incident instead of suffering in silence. The ranking wolf who'd ordered the punishment was reprimanded, and new guidelines for proportional discipline were established. Another small victory, case by case, complaint by complaint, Calith helped build a system that protected instead of destroyed. And wolves noticed. 3 months after Thessa's execution, Elder Cormac approached her in the archives where she spent most of her days now. "The council wants to make your position permanent. Formal rank, official authority, actual budget for investigations." Calith looked up from the case file she'd been reviewing. "What's the catch?" "No catch." "Well, except you'll have to deal with bureaucracy and politics for the rest of your life. But you're already doing the work. Might as well get properly recognized for it." "Will the pack accept it? A broken wolf? Sorry, formerly broken wolf. With ranked authority?" "Some won't. Some will always see you as the servant who destroyed their beloved Luna." Cormac's expression softened. "But most are starting to see what Ronan saw in you from the beginning. Strength that doesn't require cruelty. Leadership that protects instead of destroys. We need more of that, not less." Calith accepted the position. The formal ceremony was small but significant. Ronan himself placed the advocate's mark on her, a silver pin shaped like balanced scales. She wore it on everything after that, a reminder of what she'd survived to reach this point. But the real test came 4 months after Thessa's death, when Blackridge Pack finally made their move. It started with border violations. Small parties of Blackridge wolves crossing into Ironclaw territory, testing defenses, probing for weakness. Beta Marcus wanted to respond with force immediately, but Ronan held back. "They're baiting us, looking for an excuse to claim we're aggressive, that they're just defending themselves when they invade." He studied the reports spread across his desk. "We need to be smarter." "What if we're not smarter?" Derek asked. "What if we're just slower to react and they take that as permission?" "Then we need to change the game entirely," Calith said. Everyone turned to look at her. "What if we don't respond militarily? What if we respond legally?" "Legally how?" Ronan asked, interested. "Pack law allows for formal grievances between territories. We document every violation, every border crossing, every aggressive act. Build a case. Then we take it to the regional council and demand arbitration." "The regional council hasn't met in years," Marcus pointed out. "Most packs ignore them." "Because most packs prefer violence to bureaucracy. But if we force Blackridge to defend their actions in front of neutral arbitrators, we put them on the defensive. Make them explain why they're harassing a pack that's done nothing to them." Calith leaned forward. "We also establish precedent. Show other packs that there's an alternative to constant territorial wars." But Ronan considered this, his expression thoughtful. "It's risky, makes us look weak if it fails. It makes us look principled if it succeeds. Shows we're serious about changing how packs interact." Calith met his eyes. "Unless you'd rather just fight them." "Fighting them means losing wolves, possibly losing territory if they're stronger than we think." Ronan's jaw tightened. "Your way preserves lives. That matters more than looking strong." They spent the next month building their case. Calith led the investigation. documenting every border violation with precision that would have made her old healer instructors proud. Dates, times, witness statements, physical evidence. She built a case so thorough that even Blackridge's best lawyers couldn't dispute the facts. When they submitted the formal grievance to the regional council, Blackridge Alpha, a brutal wolf named Cade, was furious. He'd expected violence, wanted violence. Legal proceedings tied his hands. The arbitration hearing took place on neutral ground, overseen by 3 elder alphas from distant territories. Calith presented Ironclaw's case with the same factual precision she'd used against Thessa. No emotion, just evidence. Dates and incidents, testimony and documentation. Irrefutable truth laid out systematically. Blackridge tried to argue self-defense, claiming Ironclaw's internal instability made them a regional threat. But Calith countered with evidence of their reforms, showing how the pack was stronger and more stable than before Thessa's exile. They're not weak, she told the arbitrators. They're evolving, building something better than the old violence first model. And Blackridge sees that evolution as a threat because it exposes their own leadership as unnecessarily brutal. The arbitrators deliberated for 3 days. When they returned, their verdict was clear. Blackridge was to cease all border violations, pay reparations for damages, and accept monitoring to ensure compliance. Cade looked ready to murder everyone in the room, but he couldn't defy a regional council ruling without becoming an outlaw pack. He accepted the terms with barely controlled rage. As they left the hearing, Ronan pulled Calith aside. You just changed how territorial disputes work in this entire region. You know that? I just used the tools available instead of defaulting to violence. Exactly. And now every pack will have to consider whether fighting is worth it when legal remedies exist. Ronan smiled. You're reshaping pack culture without even trying. I'm just trying to survive without getting anyone killed. That's called leadership, Calith. Welcome to it. 6 months after Thessa's execution, Ronan called a full pack assembly. Calith stood near the front, her advocate's pin catching the light, and wondered what announcement required everyone's presence. Ronan stood before them, his presence commanding but less harsh than it had been. Leadership had softened him somehow, or maybe just made him more human. This pack has been through hell, he began. We've faced internal corruption, external threats, and our own failures. We've lost wolves we cared about. We've made mistakes that cost lives and trust. He paused, letting that sink in. But we've also changed. We've built systems to protect instead of harm. We've chosen accountability over authority. We've proven that strength doesn't require cruelty. His eyes found Calith. And we've done it because one wolf refused to stay silent, refused to accept that suffering was normal or deserved, refused to let fear win. Calith felt her face heat as every eye turned to her. Calith Vorn survived 6 years of torture and came out stronger. Not harder, not crueler, but stronger. She chose to build instead of destroy, to heal instead of harm, to lead by example instead of force. Ronan's voice carried across the silent assembly. That's the kind of wolf this pack needs, the kind of strength we should aspire to. He moved to stand directly in front of her, which is why I'm asking the pack to accept her as Luna. Calith's heart stopped. The entire assembly erupted in reaction, shock, support, outrage, all mixed together in deafening chaos. You can't be serious, Derek shouted over the noise. She's been a recognized wolf for 6 months. She has no Luna training, no experience. She has 6 years of surviving the impossible. She has courage that doesn't quit. She has a wolf that broke through trauma because she finally had something worth fighting for. Ronan's voice cut through the chaos. And she has my complete trust and respect. That's what matters. What about her wolf? Celine called out. She's barely trained, barely stable. My wolf is stable enough to fight beside you yesterday when Blackridge tested our borders, Calith interrupted, finding her voice. Stable enough to investigate your complaint about unfair training schedules and get them fixed. Stable enough to do the work this pack needs. She looked around the assembly. But Celine's right about one thing. I'm not trained as a Luna. I don't know court politics or alliance management or half the things a Luna should know. Then learn, Ronan said simply. The same way you learned pack law and investigation protocols and combat tactics. You've never let ignorance stop you before. Calith looked at him, really looked, and saw something in his eyes she'd been too afraid to acknowledge before. Not just respect or alliance, something deeper.
Why? She asked quietly, aware everyone was listening. Why me? Because you're the only wolf I've met who fights for others before fighting for herself. Because you see broken systems and fix them instead of exploiting them. Because you survived hell and chose to build heaven instead of burning everything down. Ronan's voice softened. Because I trust you, completely. And trust is the foundation of everything a Luna and Alpha need to be.
The assembly fell silent, waiting for her response. Kalith felt the weight of hundreds of eyes, hundreds of expectations. 6 months ago, she'd been invisible. Now she was being asked to lead. Her wolf stirred inside her, no longer trapped or afraid, just present, waiting to see what she'd choose. If I accept, Kalith said slowly, things continue to change. The reforms don't stop. Accountability doesn't become optional again. We keep building something better, even when it's hard. Especially when it's hard, Ronan agreed, and I want it clear. I'm not replacing Thessa. I'm not filling her role or continuing her legacy. I'm building something new, a Luna who protects instead of destroys, who leads by listening instead of intimidating, who's strong enough to be gentle. That's exactly what this pack needs, Elder Moira called out. I vote yes. As do I, Elder Cormac added. Other voices joined, Marcus surprisingly supportive. Petra, the young wolf Kalith had helped, practically screaming her approval. Even some of Thessa's former supporters grudgingly accepting that maybe change wasn't all bad. Not everyone agreed. Derek and Celine looked mutinous. Several ranked wolves clearly disapproved. But the majority, slowly and with obvious surprise at themselves, were accepting it. Then it's decided, Ronan said formally. Kalith Vorn, will you accept the position of Luna of the Ironclaw Pack? Kalith thought about her mother's promise. Survive, no matter what. She'd kept that promise through 6 years of torture, through trauma and transformation, through battles external and internal. But survival wasn't enough anymore. Time to live. I accept, she said clearly. The assembly exploded in a mixture of celebration and protest, but Ronan's hand on her shoulder grounded her. When she looked up at him, she saw pride and something else. Something that looked like hope. Don't make me regret this, she said. Don't make me regret trusting you, he countered with a slight smile. Fair enough. The Luna ceremony took place 3 days later under the full moon. Kalith wore formal clothes that Elder Moira had helped her choose, simple but elegant, befitting a Luna who led through substance rather than appearance. Her scars were visible beneath the ceremonial dress, and she'd refused to hide them. They were part of her story, part of what made her who she was. The entire pack gathered in the main yard, witnesses to history being made. Ronan stood at the center, and when Kalith joined him, she felt her wolf rise to meet his. Not in challenge, but in recognition. 2 wolves who'd fought their own battles and survived to lead together. Elder Cormac performed the ritual, binding their wolves and their leadership through ancient words and blood oaths. When it finished, Ronan turned to her with an expression she couldn't quite read. You're Luna now, equal in authority, equal in responsibility. This pack is ours to protect. Or destroy trying, Kalith said. Preferably protect. But yes, he paused. There's one more thing. Before she could ask what, Ronan kissed her. Not gentle, not tentative, but with the certainty of someone who'd made a decision and wasn't second-guessing it. Kalith froze for half a second, then kissed him back, her wolf surging forward to meet his with recognition that felt like coming home. The pack erupted in howls, approval, celebration, acknowledgement of the bond that had been obvious to everyone except the 2 of them. When they finally broke apart, Ronan rested his forehead against hers. Fair warning, I'm terrible at emotions and worse at talking about them. Good thing I've spent 6 years reading people who didn't want to be read, Kalith replied. I'll manage. That night, as Luna for the first time, Kalith stood on the highest balcony of the fortress and looked out over her territory, her pack, her responsibility. It felt impossible. 6 months ago, she'd been a broken servant waiting to die. Now she was Luna, partnered with an alpha who saw strength in her survival, leading a pack that was learning to value protection over domination. Elder Moira joined her on the balcony, a knowing smile on her weathered face. Your mother really would be proud. You keep saying that, because it keeps being true. Moira handed her a cup of something warm, tea, spiced and comforting. You've become what she hoped for, not just a survivor, but a force for change, someone who takes pain and transforms it into purpose. I'm scared I'll fail, that I'll prove everyone right who said I wasn't ready. Everyone fails sometimes. The question is what you do after. Moira sipped her own tea. Your mother failed to protect you from Thessa. I failed to check on you. Ronan failed to see what was happening under his own leadership. We all fail. But you're the one who turned failure into fuel for change. Calith thought about that. About 6 years of failing to escape, failing to fight back, failing to be the strong wolf everyone expected. But also about surviving each failure, learning from it, using it to build something better. I still have nightmares, she admitted quietly. About Thessa's chambers, about the whip, about being trapped and helpless. You probably always will. Trauma doesn't just vanish because circumstances improve. Moira's voice was gentle. But now you have a wolf to fight back with, a mate to stand with you, a pack to protect you. That won't erase the nightmares, but it makes waking up easier. They stood in comfortable silence, watching the moon paint the mountains silver. Somewhere in the fortress below, Calith could hear wolves celebrating, her ascension, the pack's survival, the hope of something better being built. She'd come so far from the terrified 16-year-old whose wolf had gone silent from trauma, from the broken servant who'd endured torture because she'd promised her mother she'd survive, from the invisible victim who'd finally found her voice. Now she was Luna, leader, protector, symbol of everything the pack could become if it chose strength over cruelty, accountability over authority, healing over harm. Was she ready? Probably not. Would she fail sometimes? Definitely. Would there be wolves who never accepted her, who saw her as the servant who'd destroyed their comfortable corruption? Absolutely. But she'd survived worse. And this time, she wasn't surviving alone. Ronan found her an hour later, still on the balcony watching the stars. He didn't say anything, just stood beside her, his presence solid and grounding. Thank you, Calith said finally, for seeing me when everyone else looked through me, for protecting me when I couldn't protect myself, for trusting me when I didn't trust myself. Thank you for refusing to stay quiet, for fighting even when it would have been easier to give up, for showing this pack what real strength looks like. Ronan's hand found hers, their fingers intertwining. We're going to build something good here, something that lasts. Or die trying. Preferably build, but yes. He smiled slightly. Together. Together. The word felt right. Not salvation, not rescue, but partnership. Two wolves who'd survived their own hells and chosen to build something better from the ashes. Calith looked out at her territory, her pack, her responsibility, her future, and felt something she hadn't felt in 6 years. Not just survival, not just hope, peace. The broken wolf had become whole. The invisible servant had become Luna. The victim had become a force for change. And in the mountains of the Ironclaw pack, under a moon that had witnessed countless cycles of violence and power, something new was beginning. Something that understood strength didn't require cruelty, that leadership meant service, that the most powerful wolves were those who protected instead of destroyed. It wouldn't be easy. Change never was. There would be challenges, resistance, wolves who preferred the old ways. But Calith had survived 6 years of torture through nothing but determination to keep her promise. This time, she had a different promise to keep. To her pack, to Ronan, to herself. Build something better. Protect instead of destroy. Lead with courage and compassion, and never ever let fear win again. Her wolf howled agreement, and across the territory, other wolves joined the song. Not celebration exactly, more like acknowledgement. The broken thing had become their Luna, and the pack would never be the same.